In Twilight Struggle, the space race is an interesting mechanic that really adds to the gameplay. One small step is an opportunity to turn the tide in the space race and potentially benefit your nation. We're going to look at it closely here today on Legendary Tactics. One small step is a card that is one of a handful of cards that influence the space race directly and give you a boost. This can be both good and bad for either player depending on the situation. Let's look at it here in more detail. First of all, let's look at the event. One small step is a 2-op neutral mid-war event card. If you are behind on the space race, triggering the event has a simple effect. Move your marker 2 boxes forward on the space race track, gaining the value in victory points of the second box only if applicable. Please note that this card does not count towards your 1 card per turn limit on the space race. And if this card skips past a space race bonus, you still get it unless it is victory points. For example, if you use this card to move from Earth satellite to be the first one to reach man in space, you would get the 2 victory points and the bonus that you may play 2 space race cards per turn, which is granted by the animal in space square. Now in this case, it would cancel the benefit for your opponent. Alternatively, if you move from man in Earth orbit to the eagle or bear has landed, you don't get the victory point provided by the lunar orbit square, but you do get the bonus provided by the eagle bear has landed, which is that you may discard 1 held card. This event can be useful for both players, and it generally speaks to managing the space race track well. Obviously, you will be taking the 2 ops if you are ahead in the space race, but what if you're behind? An instance when the event can be useful is to grab a victory point square before your opponent gets there, usually either the 2/0 square, man in space, or, even better, the 3/1 square, lunar orbit. The further you move down the track, obviously the more useful it will be, because the ops requirements of the discarded cards increase as you go. It thereby saves you lots of high ops cards to get some of the later space race bonuses. It is also generally best to play when you are 1 square behind your opponent, so you can get some benefit from the square you land on. Otherwise, you will just cancel the benefit your opponent has or get a lesser victory point reward, 0 in the case of man in space. Or, you might use this card to jump ahead in the space race in a big way. If you are doing this, and if you are far behind in the space race, you might as well space a card first, hopefully to advance, as the ops requirement will likely be lower before following up with 1 small step to get you to where you want to go. A classic move is to jump ahead of your opponent who is in the man in space square to man in Earth orbit, so you get to see your opponent's headline in advance of playing your own, an obviously massive advantage. It's not a terrible move in your last action round or after your opponent has already sent a card to space. If your opponent is already in the man in Earth orbit square, spacing a card first and then following up with 1 small step will cancel that bonus for your opponent, but also give you 3 victory points from landing on the lunar orbit square. So there are plenty of opportunities to catch up, as it generally doesn't serve you well to fall too far behind in the space race. The main disadvantage to advancing too quickly down the space race track is that you may reach a point where you are unable to send 2 ops cards to space. Once you reach man in Earth orbit, you need to have an event card with 3 ops or more. As a result, you may be stuck with cards like Liberation Theology or Decolonization in hand as the US, or the USSR may not be able to easily get rid of Voice of America or grain sales to Soviets. Sometimes it's not a bad thing to be behind in the space race a little bit. This is the balance inherent in the space race track. It will be something that each player needs to manage, and we will look at that in more detail in an upcoming video. Until then, this has been our analysis of the 1 small step card in Twilight Struggle. We hope you got some value out of this video, and if you did, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe down below. See you here next time on Legendary Tactics.